Okay, I think we're about ready, Jenny. You can let everyone in. It's 12:02. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we move forward in a wonderful presentation by Colonel Wheelock, affectionately known as Wills. The Franklin University Leadership Center is proud to have Colonel Wheelock with us today. I'm Dr. Alencia Bowen, the Executive Director for the Leadership Center, and I wanted to share with you briefly that the Leadership Center inspires the creation and sharing of knowledge and innovative leadership practices. And we're so excited that today we get to learn from Colonel Wheatlock. We also are collaborating with the IACBE, which is our accrediting bodies, and we're happy to have Ted Collins with us. Ted?
Yes, thank you so much, Alencia. Great to be with you and always appreciate the opportunity to partner with one of our member schools and especially your leadership series, which is just amazing. I'm looking forward to today. For those of you who don't know about IACBE, we accredit business programs throughout the globe. You'll see a number of the continents that we serve in the list here. And one of the things that is unique about us is that we are an outcome-based accreditor. And what that means is that we look at your individual mission and vision for your institution, and then we work with you to set up a continuous quality improvement program to assure that your business programs are being the best that they can be and giving your students what they need to go out into the business world. We are also accredited by CHIA, so everything that we ask our partner schools to go through, we also go through to make sure that everything we are doing serves you in the best way possible. On our next slide here, you're going to see a lot of the services that we offer to both members and non-members alike. So I would invite you to go to our website at iacbe.org. The first one you see there is our student case competition. We do that with our partner CapSource. The special thing this year is that you don't have to have a team from your school, but students instead apply individually, and then they will be assigned to a team. The deadline for the current competition is tomorrow to get entered for that, so I'd encourage you to go to CapSource on their link there and learn more about that. Also, if you are interested in being published in a peer-reviewed journal, we do have the Journal for Advancing Business Education. You'll find that under the news section on our website. So please take a look at that, some great articles as well. We also do webinars in addition to one like today. We have guest speakers that are just about every other Thursday. So you can go to our website under events and see what's coming up for that as well. And then we have our annual and regional conferences, which are open to both members and non-members alike. And our annual conference is coming up on April 12th. So you can go to our page under events again and learn more about that. And we do have early bird pricing going on right now. So please check out all the speakers that we have for that. Some great presentations that we're going to have, and that will be virtual. So very convenient for everyone. Last thing I'd point out is you can follow us, of course, on LinkedIn and Facebook, like us there. We have some great articles we put out there and a lot of communication. And lastly, again, if you email us at iacbe@iacbe.org, we'd be glad to talk with you about our services or add you to our e-blast list and make sure that you are up to date on everything we have going here and what we can offer you. With that, I want to hand this over to Dr. Christopher Washington to take the rest of it. So thank you again for allowing us to be here. Dr. Washington, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ted Collins. It's a real privilege to be a part of IACBE and a partner with this wonderful organization. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Leaning into the Future of Work, Lessons in Leadership from a NASA Astronaut. Now, I'm excited about today. I am a space enthusiast. And back in December, I reflected my enthusiasm in an article I published on Forbes.com entitled Embracing Out-of-Orbit Thinking to Help Your Team Grow Through What They Go Through. And I received a lot of positive feedback from members of the space community. However, a couple people told me that I really need to talk to Commander Douglas Wheelock. that he is an exceptional leader. So guess what, folks? Today, we get to hear from and talk to Colonel Douglas Wheelock. Now, he's going to provide us with a presentation, and then we're going to do our best to leave about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. But I'm going to tell you, the best thing to do is get on Twitter, hashtag Franklin Leadership, and ask your questions. Maybe we can get a good dialogue going there. About Colonel Douglas Wheelock. Now, he was selected by NASA back in 1998. The retired colonel has accumulated more than 178 days in space. That's right, days. Wheelock flew on STS-120 back in 2007 and in 2010, and he served as the flight engineer for Expedition 24 and commander for Expedition 25. Now, among his numerous accomplishments, in 2001, Colonel Wheelock assumed duties as the crew support astronaut for the International Space Station Expedition 2 and Expedition 4 crews. In 2002, Colonel Wheelock was assigned as Capsule Commander, Capcom, in the Mission Control Center in Houston. And in 2005, he was assigned as NASA's Director of Operations in Russia. Colonel Wheelock has flown aboard the Space Shuttle, the International Space Station, and the Russian Soyuz TMA spacecrafts. How about that? And when you talk about leadership under pressure, Colonel Wheelock also responded to an emergency shutdown of half of the space station's external cooling system and was the lead spacewalker for 3 unplanned spacewalks to replace the faulty ammonia pump module that caused the shutdown. Now, his efforts restored the station's critical cooling system to full function. And for his actions during this, challenging time, Colonel Wheelock was presented the American Red Cross 2010 Hero in Space Award and the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale 2010 Yuri Gagarin Gold Medal Award. Ladies and gentlemen, it brings me great pleasure to welcome and invite to our stage Colonel Douglas Wheelock.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. I hope you can see me okay. It's great to be with you. I really appreciate the invite, for the business students out there and those that are not in a STEM field or engineering field or even interested in space. You might think to yourself, well, why is an astronaut coming to talk to us about leadership in business, leadership in your life, leadership in your family, leadership in your community? And so, because I'm here because I've learned so many things, training to go to space, and then having some fearful moments in space and being able to recover from those. And a lot of the things we're going through now as individuals, as families, through this pandemic, a lot of this that we're going through really is quite mirrors what we go through with astronaut training and in periods of isolation and separation while you're in space in an out of control spacecraft. And so much of the skills that we learn and we teach our astronauts are skills that we could use every day, not only during this pandemic, but it's a way that we can, we all want to survive this pandemic, but there are ways that you can thrive through this pandemic, but they're critical points of leadership that I wanted to point out today. And today I wanted to focus on, I'm going to tell some stories about space and I'll open up the questions here in a moment, but I wanted to address 2 very, very actually uncomfortable sort of facets of leadership that we don't like to deal with because we're human, and sometimes the lessons we learn are painful. And so I want to talk about humility and authenticity. Now, we normally, we sort of, our road answer to, what are the attributes of a good leader? We always throw in, someone that's humble, that can, be vulnerable to input coming in from different angles. Also, authenticity is so important, but we don't really practice that. I look at, especially now with the advent of, and really the surge of social media now, that you can almost be anything you want to be online, in social media, and I think it whittles away at the critical skill of authenticity, which we really need to develop as leaders. And it's hard to do in this type of environment. And what I mean by authenticity is, the sign of a true leader, or the definition really of leadership, is someone who takes on the responsibility to be able to search for and find the full potential in themselves and in the people around them, the world around them, whether it's a big organization or a small team or a team of people trying to survive in space in a spacecraft. It's all the same. And so the authenticity is to be able to find that potential and draw it out of and nurture it as someone moves along their way. And sometimes we often forget about that as leaders. And so I wanted, as you go through your training, wherever you are, if you're a student listening in, or even faculty or administration, these are all important skills that we can hone like each day, of our lives. We can really work on humility and authenticity. And in the way of humility, I wanted to share a little bit of my story as I tell these stories, of kind of how it developed for me. Where when I was a young boy when we put people on the moon, and so I was 9 years old when I watched Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin just sort of bouncing around on the moon. And I was from a very, very small town in upstate New York, very small town, and really rural area. And in fact, we only had a very small black and white TV, and it was the summer of '69, of course, and we went into school that next, about a month and a half later. We went into school, and my teacher, her name was Christine West, who was her first year out of teaching school. And so she had a pretty captive audience with those kids in us in that little town, because nothing really ever special came out of our town. Nobody ever did anything extraordinary like walking on the moon. And so to watch that on TV, and of course she came in to class that first day, and she said, "Who saw the moon landing?" Of course, I raised my hand as everyone else did. And she said, "One day you could do that too." And we thought, my initial thought was this woman is crazy. She has no idea where she is in this tiny little town, this tiny little school. And, nothing extraordinary ever came from this place, And through the years, I often wondered, I thought back at those moments and wondered, I wonder if she was right. If Miss West knew what she was talking about, that it's really just ordinary people with these extraordinary dreams for their life, and the things they want to accomplish, the things they want to study, the things they want to achieve. And I went through years of my life, all the way up through to my test pilot training and flying in the military, and finally ended up at NASA. My first day as an astronaut was August 24th, 1998. And 3 days later, we had the astronaut reunion, which is something we have every 2 years. And all the old pioneers come back, and we have a dinner Friday night, and we have technical briefings and tours and things like that. And we get to kind of rub elbows with the old pioneers, And that night, they always put the rookies with the grizzled veterans, So that night at dinner, we had round tables of 8 or 10 people at the table, and I sat on the same table as Neil Armstrong, and my knees were shaking. I was like, what am I going to say to Neil Armstrong? Here I'd been an astronaut for 3 days, and had a shiny new blue suit. And I was just in awe, because to me, it was the first time I got a chance to meet him. And he was just superhuman. He was an extraordinary person. And I kept thinking back to Miss West, and I thought, man, I wonder if she was right, that even ordinary kids can do things like this, go to space and work on rockets and maybe go to the moon one day. And so it came time for me to ask Neil Armstrong a question. So I remembered how I felt as a little boy, an ordinary little boy, that, this moon landing and flying in space was for superheroes, And so I wanted to know how he felt, as an extraordinary person, So I said, "Mr. Armstrong, when you were on the moon, did you get a chance to just sort of look out at the earth and think to yourself what a profound moment it was in human history, that nothing's ever going to be the same after this, And he sort of chuckled a little bit. He goes, I did. I thought about my family, of course. I thought about the engineers that built that rocket, and I thought about my teachers and how much I missed the Earth. And I thought to myself, how does an ordinary little boy from Wapakoneta, Ohio, end up standing on the moon? And he sort of chuckled. We all sort of laughed. And I thought to myself, hey, wait a second. That's kind of a familiar story. You know, that's because that's my story. And the reality is that's your story too. We're all really just ordinary kids from ordinary places, with these extraordinary dreams for what we want to achieve, the places we want to go, the things we want to study. And so it's just an amazing, it was amazing revelation. My goal now is to make sure that those younger than that you find out this secret. It's not really a secret. It's just we're all ordinary people with ordinary from ordinary places with these extraordinary dreams. And I thought to myself, you know, it was quite a few years later that I saw this quote, and actually my dad had it on his table. And I wanted to leave this with you because this is one of the first things in the area of humility. Is that you might think to yourself, well, how can I build that in myself in my own leadership style? And my answer to that is make the ordinary come alive in your life, whatever that is for you. Make it come alive. And there is a quote from William Martin. I wanted to read it to you because it's I keep it on my desk side now because it's very, very important to me. It kind of speaks to this this era of humility and the importance of humility in being a leader. But let me share this with you. And again, it's from William Martin. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it is the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and the marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes and apples and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand, and make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself. And when I first heard this, I thought like, man, that is such a great roadmap into bringing on the era of humility, because in my line of work now, I found out pretty quickly that you know, you either come in with humility or space will bring you to your knees. And so each day there was a new surprise when I was on the space station for 6 months in 2010, and Dr. Washington had talked about the major failure we had on the space station, and it was I sort of leaned on my training at NASA, because the way we train at NASA sort of draws out humility and authenticity. And I want to share a couple of the things that we do at NASA. So let me see if I could bring up my screen too, because I have a couple of cool pictures to show you from space as well. Let me see if this will work for me. Okay, can you guys see that? Let me start this.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Okay, good. So this is me actually out on my last spacewalk. I had a chance to do 6 spacewalks, and I'll tell you what, this was terrifying to me. And you know, one of the important things in leadership is how to you know, we always, you know, psychologists tell us we're born with 2 fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. So so I get on rockets and fly to space. But the point is that everything else that we're afraid of is usually concocted in some way. It's a fear we have of something or some sort of process or some place or something like that. And that might be valid fears, but a lot of times we confuse a fearful fear with a dangerous situation. And we know that with dangerous situations, we can prepare, right? We can prepare our lives to meet these challenges. And so what we do in the astronaut corps, and what I did with my crew once I was in space, and I had I don't want to say I had I wanted to say good fortune or bad fortune. It was just the fortune of coming back from space in 2010, and my eyes were damaged. And so I was grounded from NASA space flight for a period of about 3 years. So I went back to the Army, and I spent 3 years over in Afghanistan, commanding a group over there. And I had the unique platform of being able to, 1 year after returning from space, I was in a combat zone in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and I put this leadership training that I had at NASA to test on the battlefield, and boy, it really worked wonders for me. And I'm going to leave these thoughts with you as you develop your own leadership style. So the most important thing that I learned from space is not only the humility part of it and the authenticity part of it is, but in the way that we train our astronauts is very much like the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle, having a jigsaw puzzle. And this was my favorite picture growing up. This of course is the famous Earthrise picture that was taken on Apollo 8 as they orbited the moon on that first Apollo mission that went out to the moon. And Bill Anders took this picture, and this became my favorite picture for many years growing up. And our life during this pandemic is very similar to the periods of isolation and separation we have on a long duration space mission. We had this beautiful image of our life, and when the pandemic came along, it shattered our beautiful image of our life. Now, for me as a kid, this was my image that sort of spurred me on to achieve and to study hard. But the picture of your life before this, like 1 year ago, before we really came into this pandemic and the lockdowns and things like that, you had a beautiful image of your life, where you were going in your life, and the things that you were achieving, and the things you were studying, and the things that you wanted to become. And the world, the pandemic, almost took your beautiful image and broke it into 1,000 pieces like a jigsaw puzzle, and dumped those pieces out in front of you. And so we're all in this situation now where we retreat into this periods of isolation and separation from friends and family, and our beautiful image is sitting in a pile of broken pieces in front of us, metaphorically, right? So the way that you begin to put this picture together is the same way that you look at a jigsaw puzzle, because this is like having a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle dumped out in front of you, and then someone takes the box away. And so now you don't know what that image looks like. You have a lot of memories from what you would like that image to look like, or what you had for goals for your life. And so the way that you begin to thrive through this period of isolation and separation is to think of it as a jigsaw puzzle. And this is the way we train our astronauts. And so when there are a couple of things that happen when you, step number one, don't panic, right? So that's always a great step. It's really great in all facets of life, right? And it does wonders on this in space when when something goes wrong and the alarms go off. Step one, deep breath, don't panic, right? So step two is stay in the present, and we teach our astronauts to stay. I know in the psychology field they call it mindfulness. And these are exercises that you can do as well. Stay mindful, stay in the present, because we're human, right? So we have regrets about the past. We wish we could turn back the hands of time and redo something over. The reality is we can't change the past. We can certainly learn from it, and we can change the way we react to different things, but we can't change what has already happened. And this is a very, very important skill in space, because space has the unforgiving nature of being like terribly unforgiving of mistakes and more importantly, complacency. And and you might not have that same intensity in your chosen walk of life, or in your studies, or in your profession. But eventually, if left to itself, it'll become that. It'll become something that's debilitating for your spirit and for your growth and things. And so if you don't stay mindful about what's going on, and you just learn from the past and let it go, that's really, really hard for us to do as humans, but you have to let it go and stay in the present, because the present is all that you really have. And I'm a person of faith, and even me, when I think about the future, we're not promised tomorrow, right? And so, in space, in a critical situation, you don't even know if tomorrow is going to come, right? So, and in the pandemic, it's the same sort of mindset that you need to stay in the present. You can learn from the past. You can certainly plan for the future, and you can sort of guide the navigation through your future by changing what you can in the world around you. So what are the four things you can do in your leadership? And this goes for in your own life, getting through this pandemic, and not only just surviving, but thriving as well. But also to help your family, help those around you, because you're in this conference because you either are a leader, or you're becoming a leader, or you want to be a leader. And so the most important aspect of this thriving part is to not only get to the point where you're beginning to thrive, but then you need to look for that same potential in others that might have fallen behind or might have fallen. And so metaphorically, you reach out a hand to help them thrive as well. And so those are going to be the signs of the true leaders coming through this, right? So, and make that be you. And so there are simple things you can do every day to make that be you. And some of the things that we look at, so you look back at the jigsaw puzzle. So this was my beautiful image. And so now I have these 1,000 pieces. And so if the box is taken away, the first thing we do, right, we turn all the pieces over so we can see the vibrant colors, right? So metaphorically in your life, and the good news is, when you don't panic, because everything is there, all the pieces are there. So now we have to start some action, right? So you turn the pieces over, you see the vibrant colors of your life, the things that you were studying, the things that you wanted to become. And then we look for the corner pieces, right? If we don't have a picture, we just look for those corner pieces. And in your life, metaphorically, getting through this pandemic, and I would encourage you, those with children, especially younger children, this is a great exercise for adults to do and kids to do. Get them a puzzle, dump the box out on the table and take the box away, and have them solve this puzzle without knowing what the picture is. And this is a good way they'll start with the corners, and then they'll look for the edges, the connective tissue. And for us as astronauts, the way we train, and this is a good method as a leader too, that you can bring on, because you're going to try to strengthen these four corners, not only in yourself, but in those you're attempting to lead as well, right? So we call it the heart, mind, body, and soul, right? So there are things that we could do to keep your body strong, keep physically fit, keep mentally fit, keep emotionally fit, and then keep sort of spiritually fit, or the purpose-driven part of your life, the why in your life. And so we train our astronauts to focus on those corners and do something every day of your life to strengthen those four corners. So in this pandemic, there are clearly things you can do physically, right, to stay physically fit and stay active. And then there are things you can do mentally to stay mentally fit. You can read, you can reach out to others and share ideas. Or you could do what we're doing today, just sort of share ideas of how you're surviving and thriving through this pandemic, and share those with those that you're leading, and those that are around you in your little bubble, as we call it, right? So there are ways that we can do that, and really build our physical strength, our mental strength, our emotional strength is when you start reaching out to others, right? So a lot of our human nature is to recoil, right? So, and kids, when I talk to young kids about this, I was like, well, what can I do to, I just feel so, I can't see my friends. And I said, I'll tell you what, do something for me each day. When you wake up, make your bed. And they started giggling, and I thought, like, no, think about it. What's it take? 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, to make your bed. But there's task number one done and checked off. You can begin to build this structure in your life where you don't let this pandemic, keep you in your gym, your pajamas all day, watching Netflix or something, which is not bad, by the way, from time to time, but don't let that control your life. Get up, get dressed, fix yourself up as you're going to school or to your workplace, and try to keep that part of your being, the mental part of your being, healthy and active, and the emotional part. Reach out to others. We have neighbors, we have social media, we have a telephone. We can call each other and sharpen each other as well. And so, if you're not doing, I'm assuming I'm preaching to the choir here. So you're in this leadership conference. I know that you're likely already doing this in your own life, and likely reaching out to others as well. And this conference is part of that. Being able to sharpen each other and bounce ideas off of each other with what works in the survival mode and things. And then you start building that fourth corner, which is sort of nebulous. I mentioned earlier, I'm a person of faith, and so for me, it's my spiritual kind of my impact on the world, what I see as my purpose in my profession, in my community, in my family, really answering the why. And I'll tell you that this is the hardest part of leadership, because the what, where, when, and how, they're all pretty easy, right? So they're pretty easy to define, whatever profession you're in, or whatever walk of life you're in. Those are pretty easy to define. The why is where we begin to say, like, oh, that's where it's going to draw out from you, like, why am I doing all these things, and why am I a leader, and how can I change the world around me? And so that you begin to develop that corner of your own personal jigsaw puzzle. Now, this started for me. I mentioned I kid with the kids that this is me in flight school. Not really. They call me Papa Wheels now. So, but this is the Wright brothers, and this is a really, I love this analogy, because this is the only picture of the very first flight at Kitty Hawk, and the only picture. And the guy that took this picture, his name was John Daniels, and there were 5 people on the beach that day at Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina, and 2 of them were the Wright brothers, and then others that were helping the Wright brothers. And John Daniels, when the airplane would take off, his only task was to push that button. And you remember those cameras were these huge tripods, and he had one shot and he captured it. But in interviews later on, he said he was so amazed because 4 years earlier than this, Wilbur Wright went to the Smithsonian and said, like, I want everything, all the research that you've had on flight and flying machines, because I think that one day we can fly like birds. And everybody just sort of laughed him out of the place. They were from Dayton, Ohio. They had a bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio, and so they were kind of crazy inventors, and they had a lot of inventions that didn't work out so well. And so and we have all seen those early films of flying machines where people were bouncing along the ground, and people actually strapping wings to their arms and jumping off of high places, which didn't work out so well. And then along come the Wright brothers and said, like, one day we're going to fly like birds. And then this happened. And this is a great lesson to learn from the past that you can carry with you in your walk, in your journey as well. Is this first flight only lasted 12 seconds. It went about 120 feet down the beach and lasted 12 seconds. So the next time you catch yourself letting a moment just fly by without seizing an opportunity to make a difference in your life or make a difference in the world around you, you just sort of let it go because I'll get to that later or what have you. Just remember this 12 seconds, because if we didn't have this 12 seconds, life would be a little bit different, quite a bit different than it is now. And the Wright brothers, the cool thing I love about this, of course, for those listening in from North Carolina, if you're there, of course, in North Carolina, the license plates on vehicles says North Carolina first in flight, which is true. And because this happened on the shore at out on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And so on their license plates, they proudly present first in flight. Well, in Ohio, I know we have some folks, especially from Franklin, that you know what it says on the license plate in Ohio. It's birthplace of aviation, because we celebrate that original thought, you know, the idea, the dream, you know, because that's sort of the magic of NASA, is to be able to take these innovative, creative ideas that a lot of people think are crazy and will never work, and take those ideas and they become revolutionary in other fields, sometimes in completely other fields of science. And so that's sort of the magic, as we say, at NASA, but it's not really magic. It's people believing in their dream. And so we celebrate in Ohio, we celebrate the birthplace of aviation. It came my turn to go. And one of the other things I wanted to share with you, when I was coming through my flight training, that really wasn't me in flight school, that was the Wright brothers. But when I came through my flight training, I've been flying my whole adult life. And my very first instructor pilot, I was learning in helicopters. And so when I first started out in helicopters, there's a way that you can auto rotate. In other words, if you lose your engine, you can actually use the inertia, the energy in the rotor blades to land softly. Just, as he used to say, just kiss the earth, you know? And so we were flying one day, and he was teaching me how to hover first, which I had white knuckles trying to hover, and I had sort of the pendulum swinging, and he would control it with one finger on each control, and say like, okay, you have the controls, and then I'd start going out of control in this pendulum. And he, you know, he said, you know, chance favors the prepared mind. You know that chance favors the prepared mind. What are you going to do when the engine quits? What are you going to do when the engine quits? And he was bugging the stew out of me. I was just trying to learn how to fly. And every day, every moment, he said, where are you going to go when the engine quits? Where are you going to go when the engine quits? And one day he just cut the engine on me. And he showed me and had me get into this mindset where I'm always looking for the emergency place to land. And it really paid dividends. Here in just a minute, I'm going to share with you the something that really came to light in 2009, where we all kind of experienced this kind of, can you guys still see my screen?
No.
Okay.
Not right now, no.
Okay, let's see if I can pull this back up. Yeah, somehow it went out. So let me pull this back up. Okay, am I back up?
Yes, you're
Okay,
back up.
cool. Thank you. This is my very first launch, and then hopefully the video, the audio, the sound will be on this next one. This is my launch in 2007 on the Space Shuttle Discovery. Overcoming fear. Let's see if I can.
T-minus 16 seconds. Sound suppression water system has been activated, protecting Discovery and the launch pad from acoustical energy. We have a go for main engine start. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, hoisting harmony to the heavens and opening new gateways for international science. Discovery has cleared the tower.
Houston now controlling.
On my
Roger, roll, Discovery.
I was terrified.
Discovery's roll maneuver is complete. It's now in a heads down position on track for its flight to the International Space Station.
And then when I got to space, of course, this was the view out the window, and you could see our beautiful blue planet. You know, when I was a kid, my favorite planet was Pluto. I think only because of the cartoon character and the name of the planet. And I won't ask for a show of hands, but I think Pluto got a bad rap when it's not a planet anymore. But once I went to space, and just after a few hours in space and looking out the window at our beautiful Earth, because you could see this thin blue line, that's our atmosphere. That's what makes us different than the other planets and supports our life. There you can see that thin blue line. And we're so fragile in the cosmos that it's amazing. It just takes your breath away. But in the daylight, we're orbiting the Earth once every 90 minutes or so. So every 45 minutes, we get a sunrise or a sunset. And each one as spectacular as the one before. And so it's just amazing to the Earth and the sunlight. And of course, I get asked a lot, why can't you see the stars? Because the sun is so bright, our star is so bright, and the reflection of our Earth, the reflection of that sunlight, it's almost like in the daytime passes, we get a sunrise or sunset every 45 minutes. So every day we get 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every day. And so the reflection of the Earth, the vibrant colors are like an explosion of color in this vast empty sea of darkness. It's just an amazing view. Here you can see, this is actually looking at the east coast of the US. So here's Cape Cod and Boston. You can see Long Island, New York City, and on through the Midwest, New York State, and I could see my hometown from here. And so I took this image to what an amazing planet we live on. This is the coral reefs. We were doing a lot of studies on the science of the coral reefs and how to maintain the health of our coral reefs. This happens to be, it looks like an impressionist painting, but it happens to be the Great Barrier Reef off the eastern coast of Australia. And so just an amazing ecosystem that we were helping the nation of Australia with maintaining or understanding current flows and things like that, to how to take better care of our coral reefs. You know, we have this saying as astronauts that you can't really see borders from space, which is true. And I kid the folks in Ohio that you can't even see the border between Ohio and Michigan. So those of you from listening in from Ohio will understand that. But you can see borders where the water is. And so this happens to be the Nile River, of course, snaking up through the Sahara Desert on up into the Nile River Delta by Alexandria and Cairo. And you can see how we flock to the waterways and the coastlines, the source of. Another lesson in leadership I wanted to leave with you today. On my first mission, on my shuttle mission, we had a torn solar array, and you can actually see the tear right here. And I was terrified. This is my buddy, Scott Parazinski. I actually took this picture, and we put these cufflinks, we built these cufflinks inside. It was kind of like a la Apollo 13. They told us where we could find this cable, and we sort of, we turned one of the modules into a machine shop, and we made these cufflinks and went out and sewed up this solar array. And the lesson in leadership I wanted to leave with you, we got back from space. This spacewalk was on November 3rd, 2007. We actually landed on Earth in the Space Shuttle Discovery on November 7th, so 4 days later. And those of you that have in the aviation, that have interest in aviation, there's a periodical, a magazine that comes out every month. Now it's called Aviation Week in Space Technology, and of course, pilots and astronauts refer to as AV Week. And so we got back on November 7th. November 12th, the new edition of AV Week came out, and this photo, along with others, were on the cover of that Aviation Week. And of course, I took this picture, and this is my buddy Dr. Scott Parazinski, who is our lead spacewalker on this mission. He comes into my desk in Houston, and he throws down that magazine. He goes, "Check it out, I'm on the cover of AV Week," you know? And I thought, wow. And I looked, I said, I took that picture, you know? So I went back a couple of pages where it describes the cover photo, you know? And it says, Dr. Scott Parazinski in the most daring spacewalk in NASA history, and blah, 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 blah. You know, they sewed up the solar array, blah, blah. And then it says, photo courtesy of NASA. And we sort of joked about that. And but I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I finally have arrived at the place, and you could bring your teams to this place as well. Whatever teams you're leading, big or large or small, when you can bring your team to the point where it doesn't really matter to you who gets the credit, you have reached the pinnacle in teamwork. And it's a very, very important skill set to have inside of your teams. And not all teams have this. And there's a lot of individualism sometimes in our team. And as a leader, it's your solemn obligation to draw out this type of skill where the team can work together, and it doesn't matter who gets the credit, as long, and when it doesn't matter to the team who gets the credit, it's the sky is the limit with how much you can achieve in your teams. And so very, very important skill to have in your teams. Then I wanted to share this with you because this is, I want you to listen. This is a very important event that happened in early, we call this the Miracle on the Hudson. And this is the plane that.
Here, Johnny 2760, 5,000, turning your right to 150. Johnny 2760, climb maintain 10,000.
I want you to listen.
10,000, Johnny 2760.
The calmness of the pilots, and then what they do. You can see the altitude and airspeed down at the bottom left corner of the screen there too. And the text coming up on there is the discussion inside of the cockpit. It's from the cockpit recorder.
Cactus 15.9, turn left lane 270. This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds to lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia. Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220. 220. Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately. Cactus 1529. Which engines? He lost thrust in both engines. He said. Got it. Cactus 1529. We can get it for you. Do you want to try to land 1013? We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson. Johnny 2760. Turn left 070. 2760.
Captain Sullivan.
Hi, Cactus 15.9. It's going to be left traffic to runway 31. Unable. Okay, what do you need to land?
You can see the George Washington Bridge here north of New York City. And
Cactus 15.9, runway 4 is available if you want to make left traffic to runway 4.
Runway.
What's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey, maybe Teterboro? Okay, yeah, off your right side is Teterboro Airport. Do you want to try to go to Teterboro? Yes. Teterboro, Empire, actually, LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound. Hey, guys. Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge, wants to go to the airport right now. Wants to go to our airport, check. Does he need assistance? Yes, it was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1? Runway 1, that's good. Cactus 1529, turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro. We can't do it. Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro? We're going to be in the Hudson. I'm sorry, say again, Cactus? All right. Jelly 2760, contact New York 126.8. 268, Jelly 2760. Cactus 15.9, radar contact is lost. You also got Newark Airport up at 2 o'clock in about 7 miles. Eagle 5 4718, turn left lane 210. 210, 4718. I think he said he was going in the Hudson. Cactus 1529, you still on? Cactus 1529, if you can, you got runway 29 available at Newark, will be 2 o'clock in 7 miles. Eagle 5 4718, climb maintain 12000. Okay, 1,000 and 5 at 288. Eagle 5 4718, I'm sorry, I missed that. Say again? And we're up to 12,000, 288. Okay, thank you. Eagle 5 4718, turn left 220. 220, 4718.
And of course, we remember the end of this story. Everyone on board survived, of course. And it became known as the Miracle on the Hudson. And the things I wanted to share with you out of that is just the steps that were taken that we talked about. I talked about a little bit earlier, but step 1, don't panic. You heard the calmness in Captain Sullenberger's voice. knowing that they were going down. He just didn't know where. And I talked to him right after this. He came to NASA and talked to us about the experience. And, he saw just tall buildings all around him and uneven terrain. And so he saw this big, wide, mile-wide runway in front of him. And so it just happened to be made out of water instead of asphalt. And so he didn't panic. He stayed in the present. He stayed in the moment. No sense in thinking about, rehashing what happened, and no sense in thinking about, you heard he was first trying to return to LaGuardia, and then ended up, he said, unable, and he let go of what was in the past. And then he just started making a plan for what he was going to do, using the present and what he had, which leads me to the third part of, our steps that we take in space, and the steps you should be taking as a leader, especially when your team is in crisis mode, is to not panic, stay in the present, and then take inventory of what you have. Because, and this is great in your family as well, especially during this pandemic. A lot of times we think about and we dwell on what's been lost, what we don't have anymore. And, the reality is that what you don't have anymore is not going to help you out of the present and into the future. And so being able to take inventory of what's left, and it's very, very important to do this as a team leader as well. I'm going to bring down my screen and open it up to questions now. And I'm hoping that this is the first of many visits with you guys. And so I have lots more stories to tell and videos and pictures to share as well. So I'll stop sharing there and come up for questions.
Wills, I'm going to ask you a couple questions here, and I'm going to also encourage the audience to post their questions on Twitter at Franklin Leadership, hashtag Franklin Leadership. But, I'm kind of curious, Wills, there are diverse people up on that International Space Station, and maybe you can tell us about who's up there. And, it seems like they get along quite well. What advice would you give us in terms of getting along a little better down here on Earth?
Yeah, that's great. That's part of the science experiment we're doing in space, of course. It is truly an International Space Station, especially this crew, because on board now we have a Japanese astronaut from JAXA. It's a Japanese aeronautics experiment agency, and we have U.S. astronauts and Russian cosmonauts on board. So it's truly an international group up there now. And the cool thing about these bullets I wanted to present to you today, they're universal, right? It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what culture you're from. It doesn't matter where you live or what your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter. All these tips for survival, especially as a leader, are universal. And so what we do at NASA, we initially, when we select crew members, we first put them in an isolated situation. We use NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, but we have used other sort of outdoor stressors. I spent several days in the Aquarius habitat off the coast of Florida in a 10-day mission at the bottom of the sea. And it's a situation where you don't have your iPhone, you can't phone a friend, and it's real consequences for real decisions. And we immediately put our crews together, and in that situation, and this is where authenticity and humility come into play, because you cannot be a person without those two characteristics and expect to survive on a team in a crisis situation. You just can't do it. You have to, like I mentioned earlier, you're either humble or space will bring you to your knees. And so we practice putting on those stressors. And again, it doesn't matter what language you speak or where you're from. These skill sets are universal. So great question.
Wills, the leaders today are struggling with teams that are dealing with pandemic fatigue. A lot of stress related to changes in technology and working from home, et cetera. What advice do you give to your team to deal with that sort of phenomena up in space, where they're sort of going around the planet and so many times, and you see the same scenery, et cetera? How do you deal with this sort of fatigue that can set in?
Yeah, so the in space, fortunately for us, there's never a dull moment in space. There's something breaking up there, so they're always fairly busy. But what we encourage in our crew members is these four corners I spoke of earlier. And this is the same, this is true in your family, it's true in your business, it's true at your university, it's true for you as a student, if there's students listening in, that these four corners are foundational pieces of your life. You have to answer those four things: heart, mind, body, and soul. And it's up to you to find a way to build your life in each of those areas. Now, you can ignore one area, and guess what? That puzzle will be always incomplete unless you figure out a way to do the what, where, how, when, and why of your life, you know, be able to fill in those blanks. And so, and another important thing that I want to leave you with is, you know, we're all writing our own story, right? There's all of us are in a different place on our continuum of our journey, you know, of becoming what we want to become. There's some students listening in that are just really at the advent of their careers. And so, and as we go through life, we're writing our story. And if you don't write your own story, somebody's going to write it for you. So another bit of a thought I want to leave you with is, like, write your story, make your story your story. Don't let someone else define you. Start writing your story about where you want your life to go and what purpose you want your life to, what you want your life to become. And you know, in our early phases of our life, in our career, we focus, you know, we're always the hero of our own story, aren't we? And we should be. You know, when we write our story, we're the hero. I will tell you, as a leader, there's such joy and reward in becoming a hero in someone else's story. And so, and we could do this right now as leaders and aspiring leaders. You could do this right now in your life. You can become a hero in someone else's story. And the rewards of that are way outweigh. First of all, it becomes a legacy for you rather than just an achievement for you, right? And so, you know, to be able to make that shift where you can become a hero in someone else's story is really where your career will take off.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a great place to end our presentation on that strong note. Wheels, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you taking time to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, would you just join me in expressing your appreciation to Wheels for his wonderful presentation today? You know, type something in the chat, send something out on Twitter. But thank you so much for joining us, and you bet we'll try to invite you back here soon.
Absolutely.
We really enjoy the experience, Wheels.
I would love to join you. And as Dr. Washington had mentioned, a Twitter site to go to with your questions. I think Jenny's going to put on my Twitter handle. Send me if I didn't get to your question, send me a question, or if you have a question about living and working in space, connect with me on Twitter, and then we'll make sure we do this again. And after this pandemic, let's meet in person and really celebrate thriving through this pandemic rather than just surviving.
That's a deal.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I wish you all health and happiness. Thank you so much for the invite to join you.
Anytime. Thank you. For those of you that are remaining, please continue to join Franklin University Leadership Center and all of our centers for our upcoming events. That information is available on the screen, as well as franklin.edu/events. Have a great day, everyone.